office in Texas. Thank you, whoever did that. Appreciate it. Okay, and so he also wanted me to tell you that he wanted some of his proudest accomplishments are his 2 wonderful children and his 4 beautiful granddaughters. So we won't get to see those tonight, maybe, but he's very proud of those, I'm sure. Now, tonight we're going to talk about this crazy group of birds called the tyrant flycatchers, the family Tyrannidae, and they're a very diverse group. If you go into Central and South America, gosh, there must be hundreds of different species, but we've got enough to keep us busy right here in Texas. And sometimes it can be quite confounding to try to separate them. So Craig's going to tell us about their natural history. He's going to give us some tips and tricks for identification and the cruel realities of the limitations associated with the field identification of a few of these species. Those harsh realities when we're trying to separate these things in the field. So I'm going to stop my screen and let Craig share his screen, and I will go blank and mute and turn it over to Craig.
All right, very good. Hopefully my presentation's popped up on the screen.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here this evening, and thanks to all of you for joining me. Hopefully you'll find this presentation to be meaningful, worthwhile. And of course I changed the title because, hey, that's what I do. Flycatchers are an interesting group of birds, obviously. I think we all know that. One of the nice things about them, my screen that I'm using is on to my right. That's why you're seeing me not look at the camera directly. It is a really fascinating group of birds. Most flycatchers aren't the most colorful things until they are, but they're really aggressive birds. They have character, I guess is what I would say to you. Being a licensed bird banner and having had the opportunity to hold quite a few of them, it's kind of neat to be able to see what kind of life they really do have in them. So what I want to do tonight is just kind of share with, as Patsy said, just share with you some of the information that I've learned over the years about flycatchers, some things that help me with identification in the field. And then also, as she mentioned, talk about the realities of not being able to identify every flycatcher that you see positively. And then also, if even though you're not asking, giving you permission to just call it a flycatcher, it's okay. I know we all want to have the exact same species down to the bare nub, but sometimes it's just literally just not possible, even if you're holding them. So we're going to see what we can do tonight with you. I should introduce the people I work for. I work with Texas Nature Trackers program. Been with that program for 2 years. Been with Texas Parks and Wildlife as of July 3rd. I think I've been with Texas Parks and Wildlife 11 years now. And with Texas Nature Trackers, I work with a wonderful colleague, Tanya Homayoun. She offices out of Austin. And we work within the TPWD's Wildlife Diversity Program. Our team is called the Community Stewardship and Engagement Team. There are 4 of us. And basically what we're trying to do is reach out to the public across the state of Texas to get them engaged in getting out, exploring the natural world, but then also using iNaturalist to document the natural world, what they're encountering both in terms of plants and animals. So we try to promote getting everybody engaged as a community scientist, and hopefully through those efforts, we get more and more people outside engaged in what they're seeing around them, documenting what they're seeing around them. And then in terms of conservation, it allows us to have more information so that we can make better conservation decisions as an agency down the road. And iNaturalist, hopefully most of you, if not all of you, are aware of what that is. It's a free app you can download. It's literally like walking around with a nature encyclopedia in your phone. You take pictures of things, it helps you identify what they are, or the other iNaturalist users out there can help you as well. And again, it provides us great insight to our natural resources here in the state of Texas. All right, so just to get from the get-go, just so you all know where I'm getting my source of information besides my own brain. I relied on the TOS Handbook of Texas Birds, which is a wonderful document. The Book of Texas Birds by Gary Clark, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's Birds of the World website, wonderful website, all kinds of information on every bird that you could imagine. There is a subscription fee for it, but I find it well worth it. And then also I used iNaturalist to find certain photos with photo credits. The other photos, if you don't see a photo credit, are mine, for better or for worse. And then also just life experiences. A lot of what I do by being out in the field is learn out in the field, and you get so much more by observing out there than you do by reading a book. So handling the birds, trying to identify the birds just like you all do, and having some of those same frustrations from time to time. So that's kind of where the background for all of this is coming from today. And I'm going to just kind of give you a little bit of an overview. Tyrannidae comes from the word tyrant, which of course means, you know, we all know what that means. But even though these birds are kind of beautiful birds, obviously, as that picture shows, they are very aggressive hunters of insects and other prey, and very able and willing to protect their nests and their young, whether it's sitting on the back of a red-tailed hawk or driving a zone-tailed hawk to the ground. These birds will defend themselves without a doubt. And as Patsy mentioned, there are a lot of them. Globally, there are 422 species. They are exclusive to the New World, so it's just the Americas, South, Central, and North America is where you're going to find all the flycatchers in the world. In Texas, there are 40 species that have been documented. Of those, 13 of them have been only seen once or a handful of times, and basically are on the review species list and are considered accidental. 13 of those 40 species are considered migrants. There are some that are mostly migrants, but out in West Texas in particular, there are a few that have a small, very small breeding area, or have had a history of breeding in a very small area in West Texas. So that's why that number is what it is. And there are about 19 species that are possible in South Central Texas, 11 of which breed here or very near here. And we're going to focus most of our attention tonight on the 422 species. So buckle up, everybody, because we're here for, no, I'm just kidding. We're going to focus mostly on the birds that you're going to see, most likely going to see in the Hill Country or in the San Antonio area, South Texas area. So that's where I want to spend most of our focus tonight. Some general characteristics of flycatchers, and of course there are notable exceptions, but most of them are usually olive or brown, not really brightly colored until, like you see the bird there in the photograph, is in fact lightly colored, brightly colored, I should say. The bill is generally broad, it's flat with a slightly hooked tip. I'm going to show you an image of that in just a second. They have what are known as rictal bristles around the base of their bill. It's typical of a lot of birds, but certainly the flycatchers are sometimes more exaggerated. And the thought is that those rictal bristles, which are not hairs, are actually modified feathers, are helpful in kind of helping direct prey into their mouth as they go out and trying to grab them out of the air. They generally have very small feet and toes and very short because they're up on tree branches or on wires or whatever. They're not spending a lot of time on the ground like a robin or even a blue jay, things like that. So that they don't need those long feet for what they do. They do have incredibly good abilities when it comes to being able to be aerially maneuverable, and their wings are designed to be able to do that. And if you've ever watched one fly catching, it's quite a show. And in most species, but not all, the sexes are similar in appearance. So it's real hard to tell them unless you have them in your hand in the breeding season, whether it's a male or a female. So I wanted to show you this up close picture of this flycatcher. And here's the $1 million question: what species is it? And if you want to try to guess, put it in the chat. And when I say guess, that's exactly what I mean. But what I want to show you is you can see this bill is kind of flattened. It's not conical like you'd see in goldfinches or or cardinals, certainly things like that. More of a flattened bill. It's wide, kind of a wide bill, so it kind of maximizes its airspace that it's grabbing insects from. Notice it has a little bit of a hook on the end of the bill. That probably helps grab and hold on to larger insects. And then these large, dark bristles right here, those are the rectal bristles, those modified hair or feathers that allow them to helps with, the thought is, helps with them securing their food. And in terms of what this bird is, if you guessed, it's some kind of flycatcher. I believe the word is EMP, EMP. From that picture, there's no way to know for sure. All right, so just as a little bit of general natural history background before we start getting into the individual species. They occupy a wide range of habitats. You can find flycatchers of one kind or another just about anywhere in Texas, whether it's in the deep desert of West Texas, Chihuahua Desert, or if it's on the Panhandle, if it's in East Texas, or right here at home. So they are very, very adaptable. Their diet consists primarily of insects and then other invertebrates, in particular spiders. They'll often nab spiders from the ground. They also, a fair number of them will actually persist on fruit when, especially in the wintertime or the non-breeding season. So some of them can eat and benefit from fruit that are on the trees and shrubs. Most prey, the way they capture their prey is usually by what a behavior called sallying, where they'll sit on a perch and then they see something flying by and they fly out to it, grab it, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they'll come back to the same perch, eat that insect, and then wait and go get another one. Very, very distinctive behavior in terms of the way they fly catch their prey. And of course, they will also go straight to the ground to grab spiders and beetles and other things that are walking on the ground as well. Most species are monogamous, with both parents providing nestling care. Typically, the female is the one that builds the nest, obviously lays the eggs, does the incubation, but they both will feed the young. The male oftentimes will feed the female while she's sitting on the nest. And in a few cases, the male will actually help pick out a site for the nest, but it's usually the female that does that. Nests can be either in the open on a tree branch, or they can be in a cavity. So a few of our flycatchers are what are known as secondary cavity nesting birds. So they don't actually excavate the cavity. That what they're doing is taking advantage of the fact that there's a cavity there, and they build their nest inside that cavity. Incubation generally for the eggs is usually 14 to 16 days, somewhere in that range. The young generally fledge from 14 to 17 days. So if you figure out that, let's say they lay an average of 5 eggs, a lot of them lay 4 to 6 eggs. If they lay 5 eggs, that's 5 days, 1 egg per day for most species. They begin incubation at the last of the laying of the last egg. And you've got about a week there. Now you've got almost 2 weeks before they actually are going to hatch. Then you've got another 2 weeks plus before they're actually going to fledge their young. And beyond that, when the young fledge the nest, oftentimes the parents, the male, if the female is going to nest again, but certainly they both will feed those fledglings for sometimes several weeks before they become completely independent. So, and of course, there's variation with all of those numbers between species. So we're going to start with an easy bird. Everybody knows this bird, and that is, of course, is the vermilion flycatcher. This is the first time I ever saw this bird. Now I'm going to start getting into stories. First time I ever saw this bird, I was coming down here from the University of Arkansas. I was in graduate school. I was taking ornithology, the graduate level. We drove to Texas for a birding trip, and we drove into Choke Canyon State Park to spend the first night. And the sun was setting, and on a fence line, I'll never forget this, on a fence line was sitting this most majestic, unbelievably beautiful bird, the male vermilion flycatcher. And literally that bird looked like it was on fire. I have taken a lot of pictures of vermilion flycatchers, and it's unbelievable how hard it is to catch the actual majestic coloration of this bird, but it is beyond red. I mean, and I've held them in my hand. They're absolutely one of the most beautiful birds out there. And of course, I haven't traveled to all the places that Tom and Patsy and Coco and some of the rest of you have traveled. But for me, this is just about as good as it gets. But you've got the male right there, very obvious in terms of, I don't even have to describe that. You just look at it and go, oh, that's a Vermilion flycatcher. By the way, the genus name, Pyrocephalus, means fire-headed. Great description. The female is over here. And the reason I tell this a female from this guy right here, which is one of its fledglings, by the way, this is the male, the dad, the mom, and the baby. This one has nice fluffy feathers on the head, light markings right here, and was a baby. And this one, if you'll notice, the tail is all tattered. She's got that little bit of pinkish color, rusty color on the belly. She looks much thinner as well and much more worn in terms of feathers from raising those babies. They are obviously sexually dimorphic. This is one of those exceptions to the rule of most of them looking, male and females looking alike. Both the female and the young males will have a blush of orange red on the belly. So unless you can really get a good close-up look at the feathering and just the conditioning of the feathers, young birds, when they leave the nest, they have grown literally thousands of feathers in a matter of 2 weeks. So the quality of those feathers is never going to be like you're going to see on an adult that's gone through a molt in the fall, a slow molt where they're gradually changing feathers. These bird has to just grow feather constantly. So they're going to look a little fluffier, a little more downy, if you will, than the adults do. They build a nest over the fork of in a tree limb. It's a rather shallow nest. I've read where when the young are about to fledge, they don't even all fit into the nest, even though they're only laying 2 to 3 eggs per clutch. And I've even seen them nest on those branches on completely dead trees. Completely dead trees, there's a nest on a branch. So they have actually no cover above, below, or from the sides. Incubation, of course, is by female only. They fledge in 13 to 15 days. It's a little smaller birds, so they're going to get out of the nest a little sooner than perhaps one of the larger flycatchers. They are typically here in the summertime, spring, summer, fall. A few, at least where I live in Bernie, a lot of them drop south. Now, where you live, if you're down in San Antonio, or if you're South San Antonio into the brushlands, or even at Mitchell Lake, you may see a few of them that overwinter in that area. I have seen them overwinter along the Guadalupe River, but generally the birds that are here in the spring, summer, fall migrate farther south for the winter time. And it's a bird of a lot of different habitats. It typically likes open country with scattered trees in which to nest, lots of perches, available perches for it. And I'm going to do something here. It's going to be a little tricky, but I'm going to try and play the songs of most of these birds because I want you to hear them. So I've got the volume up, and hopefully, and if Patsy or somebody can unmute me, just to make sure that I'm playing them, they can be heard. We're going to do the male flight song of the Vermilion flycatcher. It's very distinctive. They will leave a branch and do this wing fluttering up in the air, flying around like this, maybe not with their eyes that wide open, and making this song. And it's absolutely wonderful to watch. So here we go.
Yeah. You can hear it.
Perfect. Thank you. And so what you have to imagine is the bird is going up in the air and it's quivering around in the air. And then as that volume gets louder, it goes even higher. I mean, it's just like the calling lifts it up higher. That's the Vermilion flycatcher. That's the typical breeding song of the Vermilion flycatcher. And it really is something to watch. So when you hear that sound, start looking around in the air above the trees that are nearby, and you'll usually see this thing doing that wing fluttering up above those trees. And then it will dive back down to one of the trees and land on a branch, all to impress the female, apparently. All right, the next easy bird that we're going to do, the second easiest, it might be the first easiest, but certainly the second, if not the first, is the scissor-tailed flycatcher. I got a picture of a nest of that bird just the other day, actually doing some research on loggerhead shrikes. So you can see the beautiful eggs they have there. They use a lot of material in their nest, but what a beautiful bird. Males have a tail that's between 8 and 9 inches long. It looks bigger than that when you're out there in the field with them. Females usually around 6 inches long, still long. And of course, young, when they leave the nest, their tails are even shorter. It takes a while for them to grow. So you may see what for all the world looks like a scissor-tail flycatcher with a short tail. Likelihood this time of the year is that that's a young bird that's just fledged from the nest. But they are absolutely a striking, beautiful bird. I've been fortunate to hold a couple of those that we've caught bird banding, and oh my gosh, they're amazing. They're very vocal. That's another bird. I'm gonna close this out, and there's the scissor tail right there. By the way, I should say that the sounds that you're going to be hearing tonight are coming from the app iBird Pro. So I want to give that a shout out for there. They breed it throughout most of Texas. They go all the way up into Oklahoma, Kansas, a little bit into western Missouri, parts of Arkansas, and parts of western Louisiana. So they have a pretty good and significant range. They can lay up to 2 clutches of eggs. They'll lay from 4 to 5 eggs each time. 5 is generally the norm. About 14 days of incubation, a little bit longer to fledge their young, a little bit over 2 weeks generally. And they're usually only a summer resident in our area. But what's really fun is when they get ready to migrate, all of a sudden you'll see big flocks gathering together for a few days before they finally disappear in the wintertime. But this is a bird that's obviously easy to recognize because of that tail. The nest itself is usually placed fairly low. I was able to reach my camera into this nest. It was in a small tree in a park, believe it or not, or actually this was in a tree right next to City Hall out by Round Rock. And these birds will nest in areas where when you find them nesting, we think of birds being out in wild areas. It turns out there's a lot of places that they've adapted to, and flycatchers are very good at, some of these open country flycatchers are very adaptable, and this is no exception. This one will nest in trees in the middle of town, especially if there's street lights at night where they can hunt in the early morning and late into the evening before pitch dark. They can hunt insects that are coming to those lights. They take advantage of that. As do western kingbirds and others. But they'll use a lot of different human-made materials in their nest. They'll nest in the small trees that are planted if it has dense branching. And that's why one of the things we're doing some research, Tanya and I, and with some folks from the Oaks and Prairies joint venture are doing research on loggerhead shrikes in Round Rock at Old Settlers Park, which is a large recreational park. But they've planted all these small oaks and elms, and they're densely branched, and the loggerhead shrikes are all over the place up there nesting, along with scissor-tail flycatchers. So one of the things I was going to say, if you have an acreage or you have a place and you see people trimming out those branches to make the trees more airy, that actually is a negative for birds like the scissor-tail flycatcher. So keep that in mind. They need those small trees with that real dense brushy branches and lots of leaves in there. They don't want it to be too thinned out. But again, what a wonderful bird. Let's play its song here. Let's see here. Here we go. Get ready for this one. I got that rubber duck sort of thing that starts to squeeze a little harder and harder. There you go. So that's a pretty distinct call. And that call, by the way, I always get it confused with a couple of other birds we're going to hear, flycatchers that we're going to hear here in a little bit. So, but that one kind of starts out slow, gets to a crescendo, and then just starts off and then or stops and then cuts off and starts again. Now we're going to move into more of a riparian woodland type flycatcher. We've got those two that are out in the open country. This is another one of our breeding flycatchers in our area, the great crested flycatcher. What a great name too, by the way. This is another really stunning bird. Has a very loud call. Let's see here. Let me find it and I'll play that right off the bat for you. It sounds like weep. And I do it terrible, just a terrible rendition of it. It's embarrassing, but here we go. And this is a call that you're going to probably hear if you live in San Antonio or any neighborhood, Bernie. They're there. A lot of times they're up in the tops of the trees, and you'll notice their coloration blends in really nice with green leaves. Stop that one. So you'll often hear this bird before you ever see it. But the key to seeing it, I think, is once you hear the bird, just don't try to look with your binoculars. Just let your eyes kind of widen out and look at the whole tree once you've narrowed down that tree, and wait for it. It'll be at the top or near the top or out in the front. It's usually not in the middle of the branches in my experience. So it's a bird that will reveal itself with some patience. And of course you can see it's got some very distinctive colors. It's got this beautiful yellow in the chest and the belly. It's got gray on the throat, if you will, and then a brown head. And the tail is kind of a rusty color. This photograph, it reminds me a little bit of the rusty color of the hermit thrush, but they have a lot of brown that you can see here on either from whether it's the backside or the underside of this one. They are a cavity nesting bird. This is a secondary cavity nesting bird. I'm very fortunate right now that I've got a pair of these nesting in my backyard in an old woodpecker hole, which is kind of exciting. We actually here at Cibolo Nature Center, if you come out here anytime in the next couple of weeks, and you go to walk the trails where the buildings are, there's a series of martin houses. There's actually, earlier there was a tough black-crested titmouse that nested in there. Now there's a great crested flycatcher. This is the second summer that there's been a great crested flycatcher nesting in one of those purple martin houses. And since there are no martins, somebody ought to use them. But they'll use snakeskin. They're kind of famous for using snake skins. And of course, there's a lot of debate because they'll also use plastic, human plastic and other materials. But a lot of times they've done some experiments with snake skins, and it does deter things like rodents and other animals that might not want to get eaten by a snake. So the thought is that that may be purposeful. And it may be that that is purposeful. And when they can't find the snake skin, they use the human plastic, which unfortunately is laying all over the landscape, isn't it now? They are found in the eastern half of the United States. So where I grew up, the great crested flycatcher was very common up in Iowa and Minnesota and wherever I lived up north. So it's for me, it's kind of a homecoming kind of bird. Really enjoy it. Both sexes will check out cavities, but again, the female only does the building. And they say it only raises one brood a year, but I suspect that they raise more than one. They do have a lot of nest predation. All birds do. So it may be that I'm seeing the first attempt failed, and now they're doing another one. All right, so that's that one. And then we have the ash-throated flycatcher. This bird outwardly looks a little bit like a great crested, but instead of in a forest setting where you're going to find a great crested flycatcher, this bird loves the desert settings. And I use love in the human sense, but it is found out in the deserts. It doesn't drink water. It doesn't need a lot of water. Apparently it gets its water from its food. But it is a bird that loves the Chihuahua Desert. So that's a great place to find it. They extend all the way here, the South Texas Plains. I've had them nesting at Honey Creek when I worked at Guadalupe River. So all the way over towards Spring Branch. So they're in the area, but the farther west you go, the more common they become. And let me go ahead and get that one ready to go. So you'll notice this one has a little bit of yellow on the belly, but not like the great crested, a lot less. So a very faint bit of yellow down here and mostly on the belly, not on the chest. It does have a brown crest, and a lot of kingbirds, by the way, and flycatchers in general will raise these feathers. So it's not like a crest of a cardinal, but you'll see that raised crest. And that sometimes can help you identify what the birds are. Kingbirds generally don't do that as much, but flycatchers certainly do. And again, they are a cavity nesting bird. They average about 4 eggs in their clutch size. You can see some of the other statistics. Here's the thing I wanted to share with you. These guys, and this is not a shrike. Shrikes will eat everything you see on that list right there, and including other birds. But here is a bird, not a shrike, that eats lizards, snakes, small rodents, lots of insects, of course, and fruit. What a varied diet for a songbird. So I just find that fascinating that this bird takes advantage of all that. And if you look at this bird, it's got skinny little feet. It's got a beak that has not got a big hook in it, like you'd expect in a bird that would eat a bird that would eat these kind of animals. And yet this thing can take on just about anything out there in the desert, it sounds like. So what a great bird. And hopefully you've been able to see these around here. So let me, this one has a call that sounds like cabrick. So here we go. There's some more of its calls. Let me try another one. Cabrick, cabrick, real distinct call. All right, we'll stop that one. But again, another wonderful flycatcher with the name Flycatcher, by the way. And here's a comparison, just so you can see the difference, how different these two birds actually look. Out in the field, if the lighting's not right, you might think this has more yellow or less yellow. This might have less yellow, but you can see the distinct differences in these birds right here. The ashy throat goes all the way down through the chest. The yellow here comes all the way up to the throat. So that, and again, habitat's going to be a very big deciding factor. I should also tell you, when young great crested flycatchers leave the nest, they look an awful lot like ash-throated flycatchers. So just so you know that, they don't come out with all that distinct bright yellow right after they fledge. And then I want to give Laura Render a shout out here. Laura, thank you. You took this picture on a bird walk that we did in Honey Creek years and years ago. And you loaned me these pictures, so I'm using it tonight because it's such an awesome picture of an Acadian flycatcher. This is one of those Empedonax flycatchers, but it's the one that breeds here in our area. It's mostly an eastern and northern bird, but the breeding territory extends all the way down in here into the Guadalupe River area and parts of this part of Texas. So it's not unusual. Patsy was talking about where she'd heard it before, and it does have a very distinctive call. And I'll pull this up. Let's see, Acadian right there. Here's its call. It's an awesome call. Let's see here. So, hang on. Let me pay pizza again. There you go. But imagine taking a little rubber ducky and going out there and going, give it a good hard squeeze and let go of it. Pizza, really loud, very distinctive. They live in riparian, wooded, streamside, riverside habitat. And so in those woods, kind of open woods, they don't like it real thick and dense, but they live out there in those open forest, gallery type forests. And that sound carries a long ways in the forest as they call out. And one of the interesting things about their nest, they've got a little, they were actually at a nest here. The nest is right in here. It's made of a lot of lichens and other materials, but characteristic of Acadian flycatcher nests, and very unlike most nests, they actually have material, these tails they call them, hanging down off the nest. And it looks like a lot of this is Spanish moss, which happens to be very common in that area. So that's kind of an interesting characteristic of a nest of an Acadian flycatcher. But they have two very distinct wing bars, like all the imps do. They've got an eye ring around the eye that's kind of whitish yellow, like the imps do. They're kind of smallish, like the imps are. But because they breed here and they're calling in the summertime, that's the best way to confirm that what you're seeing is an Acadian flycatcher. And they also, when they're hunting, they're kind of fun to watch. They're going to be hunting. They eat small insects for the most part, but they'll actually hover underneath. So if this is a leaf hanging, they'll come under that leaf and hover under here and grab a small insect or two off the underside of leaves. So you'll see that behavior if you watch for them in those riparian areas to be there. So awesome little Empedonax flycatcher. Now here's the deal. If that bird were in October and not calling, I wouldn't be able to tell you that that was an Acadian flycatcher. Okay, just saying. That's kind of a heads up for what we're facing. All right, we're going to move on to some other flycatchers that are now not breeders here, but they are migratory birds. And one of my favorite flycatchers of all time is the olive-sided flycatcher. And if I go through a spring and I have not seen an olive-sided flycatcher, I'm extraordinarily disappointed. Unfortunately, their populations are dropping, are declining. So it may be getting harder and harder to find these, but every spring I'm able to find them. And here's how I find them. First of all, they come in late. They're into mid to late May when they start showing up around where I live, here in the Bernie area. And what I'll notice is I'll see a large flycatcher, and you see that crest on the photograph on the right. It'll be sitting on the very tip top of a dead tree or a dead limb, the highest point on the landscape. And they'll be sitting there upright like that with that crest. And man, right away you can tell that this guy is present. So that's something to watch when you're in migration time in mid to late May, and then again in the fall. And they actually come back early. So September-ish time is the time to look for them. To identify them is always a little bit tricky. A lot of the field guides show a white patch behind their wing. I swear I've never seen that. It's got to be there, but I've never seen it. What I look for, again, is size, is habitat. Where is it? It's out on this perch. It's a large flycatcher. And when I say large, I'm not talking large like a green heron or something, but for a flycatcher, it looks like a big bird. And also the other thing to notice, and it's easier to see on this bird on the left, kind of a yellowish wash center streak going right down the middle of the belly and the chest. And then this darkish wash on either side of that on their flanks. Very distinctive pattern that helps you to identify these birds. And oh, by the way, I caught one of these in a net one time. Holy cow, are they not friendly birds? They wanted nothing to do with me. They are aggressive, serious birds, let me tell you. And because of that, this gentleman by the name of J.T. Marshall referred to them as the peregrine of flycatchers because they're aggressive hunters. But watch for them in the spring migration, especially, and add that to your list of must-sees every spring when you're out bird watching. Then we're going to get into a couple of the smaller ones that kind of look alikes a little bit. Some confusion can happen here. We're going to move back to the woodlands. That olive-sided flycatcher is going to be out in open areas. But the eastern wood pewee is mostly a woodland or a woodland edge bird. They especially seems like to me, where I hear most of them are in riparian areas, similar to what I hear when I see and find the Acadian flycatchers. Now you'll notice this bird has got wing bars like an imp flycatcher. It's bigger than the imps that we have. But here's one of the big differences. It does have that little crestish kind of going there, but you'll notice it's barely got an eye ring. There's a little bit of hint of white in the back, but they don't have a distinct, very noticeable or pronounced eye ring. They also have a very distinct call, and I want to play that, but now I've got to go out and find that. So bear with me just a minute. All right, here we go. Eastern wood pewee. They get their name because they say their name. Okay, here we go. Let's see, here we go. There you go. So that's what they're saying. And then they also do this. They got that call. And what I've noticed with a lot of eastern wood peewees, that it almost sounds like they're asking a question. Pewee. They'll follow it up with that second call, and it sounds like they're answering their own question. That's how my brain hears it. So anyway, I don't know if you have ever noticed that either, but that's what I seem to know. And they will also build a nest out on tree branches, a forked branch, but their nests are usually, instead of tucked in close to the trunk, they're usually way out on the edge of the trees. Out of the farthest out tree branches away from the trunk. So kind of an interesting characteristic in terms of where they put their nest. So the eastern wood pewee, not as common as our next bird being the eastern phoebe. And the phoebe, of course, is named because of its call that it makes. And so you'll notice that the phoebe is one of those birds you identify because it has no field marks, basically. It doesn't really have wing bars. Now the juveniles, the fledglings, do have a hint of wing bars, so you got to be remembering that. They don't have an eye ring at all. If you look at those birds, they don't have an eye ring. They've got a brown head and a pretty dull chest and belly. So, and you see that little bit of yellowish wash. That's usually when it's freshly molted in the fall, that wears off as the season goes along. So it's a neat little bird. It makes its nest, as many of you may know that have them nesting around you, mostly out of moss. Very, very nice. Their best key identifier mark, of course, is that they flick their tail. When they land, you'll see that tail flick like that. And that's probably the easiest way to tell an eastern phoebe in our area. They nest over and over and over again. They're a great bird to have around. Some people pull their nest down. First of all, that's illegal. Second of all, why would you? They're eating all kinds of flying insects, some of which certainly can be pests to us. So here's the phoebe very quickly. I know my time is coming along, Patsy, so I'm aware of that. Let's see here. Here's their call. Real raspy call. Okay, so there's that bird. So now we'll move on. And so now you can kind of compare these two, because I remember when I was a young bird watcher, kind of new into it, for some reason I would get these two birds confused all the time. And why, I don't know. I must not have had a good teacher. But when you look at them, they're kind of the same color scheme. But notice this one has a little bit more of a crest here. It's got a little hint of an eye ring, but only in the back of the eye. But it's got distinctive wing bars. And these two can be in the same habitat. So it wouldn't be that hard to be able to miss them or confuse them. The other thing I didn't mention on the phoebe, notice that the bill is all black, all black. This one is always going to, like a lot of flycatchers, is going to have a yellow lower mandible. You're not going to see that in a phoebe generally. So another little clue for identifying those two. And then we do have other phoebes. We have the Say's phoebe that comes here in the wintertime. It nests in West Texas, usually
Craig, you froze.
we'll get going. We got to keep moving along here, I know. So, and then we have we could have, you're better off to go west to find this bird into the big canyons of Big Bend. But I've seen them on the Guadalupe River. In fact, the two nests that you see right here were a pair of black phoebes that moved into Guadalupe River State Park one winter, built the two nests, and then we had one of our big floods back in about 2014 or 15 and wiped out their nests and never saw the birds again. But the black phoebe is all black on the head, all black on the chest. If the lighting's not right, I've had people confuse the eastern phoebe with this bird. I'm not quite sure how, but you can. But just notice that all dark coloration with just that splash of white on the belly. But this is a bird that generally doesn't breed around here. If you go down to the valley, lower Rio Grande Valley, or you go to West Texas, it's going to be a bird that you're going to encounter a little bit more often. Now, speaking of birds with black and white, I wanted to throw this one in. And if you go back and forth, they're not that similar, but they are black and white. So that's why I lumped the eastern kingbird here. The eastern kingbird nests in the eastern half of the state, or eastern 1/3 of the state, and is more of a northern and eastern bird, as the name might imply. But it is black and white, beautiful colors. It has a red streak right down the center of the head, which you mostly don't see. But what you're going to see here is it's got black on the top of the head, black wings, black tail. But the key mark on this bird is that white tipped tail. You cannot mistake this bird when you see that pattern and the white tipped tail. They come through here in spring. They're kind of a prairie bird. They nest in small trees, but they are an open country type of bird. I've seen them in the springtime. I usually catch them at the soccer fields here in Bernie. See them there once in a while. So it's a great bird to watch for, but we're right on the far eastern edge of their breeding range. Not that far away, but kind of on the edge. So there's a comparison of those two birds. You can see how different they really are, but black and white tyrannid flycatchers. And then the other kingbird that I want to share with you tonight, the last two, is this guy, the western kingbird. What a great bird. There's that red patch that's in the center of the head of this bird as well. This was a very upset bird. This, by the way, Patsy, I don't know if you were there that day, but this was caught at Mitchell Lake Audubon. Very, very beautiful kingbird, our common one around here. Very adaptable to human habitation again. Frequently nests in lights or light poles where there's a crossbar, and kind of a sloppy nest. And so you'll see them at baseball stadiums, football stadiums, around gas stations that have those lights out at night, and tall light poles. You can recognize this because of the gray head, gray neck, the yellow on that kind of starts about midway down the chest and down to the belly. But the biggest thing is it's got kind of darkish tail feathers. And when it flares out the tail, you're going to see that the outer tail feather is tipped in white on both sides. Very distinctive. Can't confuse that with anything else around here. And you often too see these in the company of loggerhead shrikes and scissortail flycatchers. But they're really, really beautiful, very aggressive, wonderful western kingbird. And while we're at it, let me go ahead and play the call. And I know my time is of the essence. Let's see here.
It's okay. We're having a good time, Craig.
Okay. I'm getting close, though. I'm getting close, just so you know. All right. So here's the western kingbird. Oh, I love this sound. Dawn's song. Listen to this one. That rubber ducky kind of quality to it. To me, it just sounds like a really upset bird. But you'll hear that early in the morning before it ever gets light in the proper habitat. So watch for these birds. Baseball fields, I mean, all over the place. They really are adaptable to our environments, probably for their benefit, of course. Good thing. And then the last kingbird I want to share with you is the Couch's kingbird. I've got one more after this. I threw this in here because if it's normally down in the lower Rio Grande Valley, but it is extending its range north through the brush country and all the way into the southern Bexar County. So this is a bird that's going to become a little bit more common, I think, over time. It appears that it's going to be. It's a little bit closely related in terms of plumage to the western kingbird, and I'll show you a comparable picture here in just a moment. But it's going to have more yellow. The yellow comes all the way up to the neck instead of stopping at the upper chest. It also doesn't have white anywhere on the tail feathers, and the tail feathers are generally brown and not leaning towards black or dark, deep brown. It's a lot of these kingbirds, by the way, and flycatchers are not susceptible very much to cowbird predation, parasitism, because they can recognize the eggs and they either keep the birds away or they can pitch the eggs out of the nest so that they're not raising somebody else's babies. Here's a comparison of those two birds. The western kingbird on the right, you've got all this yellow. Again, you can kind of see there's a necklace right here that separates out the yellow from the gray, whereas this one, the yellow, a little bit brighter in color, goes all the way up to just under the bill. The other thing to notice, again, here's a great example. Look how flat that bill is, again, for grabbing aerial insects. What an advantage. Notice how much thicker and larger appearing this bill is on this particular, the Couch's kingbird. You'll see that on that and the tropical kingbird, another bird that's even farther down into the Rio Grande Valley and much less likely to get here. So I wanted to share those with you. And then I'm also going to just throw these two up too, because it wouldn't be impossible to get these two confused. Notice how much yellow this is the great crested flycatcher again. It's got the gray up here, but this one has gray that covers the head. Notice there's no brown in the tail, but lots of yellow. So again, when you see these yellow chested and yellow bellied flycatchers like this, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that you just have to keep studying the bird and remember, where's color on the rest of the body? Don't look at the back so much, but look at the head, the side of the face, the throat. the tail feathers, all of those are going to help you with identifying some of these flycatchers. And then of course there's the great kiskadee. Patsy, I told you I didn't put it in there, but I felt bad. So here's the great kiskadee. What an spectacular bird, isn't it? It's found in the lower Rio Grande Valley, but I know I've seen it at Mitchell Lake Audubon on a couple of occasions, and they seem to be another bird that is slowly expanding its range north. Size of a blue jay, very, very loud, distinctive call. Let's see here, let me close it out. And then we're gonna get to everybody's favorite birds to end this thing. And you all know what those are. Hey, there's a hummingbird right outside my window. Let's see, kiskadee. Let's see if I can find a kiskadee. There it is. Oh, I had it. There we go. Patangus. What a scientific name. Patangus. All right, here we go. Doesn't it sound like a tropical bird? That is a tropical bird. And of course, they're down there in the valley. I love that call. Love that call. It says its name. It's amazing how many of these flycatchers actually say their name. Kind of interesting. And now what you've all been waiting for, drum roll. These Empodonax flycatchers. Okay, so here we go. They're little, they're wing barred, they're eye ringed, they're olive to brownish. They are fly-catching songbirds of spring and fall, migrating through here. They come through, and some of them come through in fairly large numbers. Not all at the same time, but they're ever omnipresent for a few weeks. They are generally non-vocal when they're here in the spring. Now, they may give a call. The least flycatcher may actually do chibek, but generally they're pretty quiet. Now, why does this matter? It matters because if you can't hear their call, their regular call, good luck in identifying the majority of them. When you see them side by side, you might think, well, I can tell at least from, alder, maybe, but chances are probably not. And I'm speaking from the standpoint as Patsy was relating earlier, because she was sitting there with me doing this. Coco, I think, has done the same thing. I've got this bird in my hand. It's an Empodonax flycatcher. We know that. I go and I measure the width of the bill, the length of the bill from the nair to the tip of the bill. I measure P9 minus P6, P9 minus P8. I measure the shortest primary versus subtracting from the longest primary. Okay. I have to measure the tail length, and I have to measure the wing chord. And I put all those numbers down, and I look at the chart and I go, Trails flycatcher? The bottom line is with these guys is they are not easy to identify, and it's okay. And if you have somebody walking around going, yeah, that's an alder, and that's a willow, and that's a yellow belly, and you're not hearing any sound, I would step back a couple of steps, okay? Because I would not want that rubbing off on me. The bottom line is flycatchers are really hard to identify. If some people think sparrows are hard to identify, they're cake compared to Empodonax flycatchers. And it's okay. It's really okay. Okay. It's just a joy to watch them and see what they do. And maybe you'll get to identify them. So just to show you, there are 3 pictures of flycatchers I took this spring. Well, this one was actually last year in the fall, I think. And this one, I thought, well, is it a least? Sure looks like a least. It's little. Here's another one. It's little. It's got a little beak. Is it a least? Yeah, I don't know. And is this a yellow belly? I sure thought this was a yellow belly. I followed this around. It was all yellow in the front. It's in the fall, fresh molt. Keep that in mind. But was it a yellow belly? I literally will never know. And here's some in the hand just to show you how simple this is. Well, based on my hand size here and here with these birds by comparison, clearly this bird is bigger than these other 2. So the least flycatcher is the smallest flycatcher, and it has a thin little bill. So could these be least flycatchers? They may have been. What about this one, a willow or an alder? chances are we put down trails because the measurements are so overlapping. It's really hard to tell, even in the hand. And then finally, here are two we caught at Mitchell Lake back in 2019. Again, willow, alder, or do we just lump them into the old trails name? Again, very, very challenging birds to identify through binoculars for sure. And in your hand, some ways even more difficult maybe. But they do have distinct calls. The alder says Phoebeo. The willow says Fitzview. The least, which again, the least will sing around here a little bit. Chebec, chebec. And then the yellow-bellied chewee, chewee. Well, of these four birds, the least is pretty much the most common. And then of these two, based on bird banding results, the alder flycatcher tends to be more common than the willow, and the yellow-bellied the least of all. But you will have people that you will go birding with and they'll go, that is without a doubt an alder flycatcher. Seriously, how do they know? So just kind of keep that in mind, that some of them are really hard to identify, and that's okay. All right, so just keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to close with something that happened back in 2015. It started in 2014 at Honey Creek when they cleared a lot of ash juniper trees. And then the next spring, I and my bird banders were out there, fellow bird banders, John Prentice and Linda Gindler and others. We're out there, I think we were looking for sites to start a map station. And it was 158 acres, this road boundary here to here around this tree line. All of this had been cleared and burned, and just burned that spring, early spring, from all that ash juniper. Open this up, created a savanna, instant savanna. The trees you see out there are mostly oak trees. This is what happened. We came out one day, we didn't expect this at all. All of a sudden we noticed that there are scissor-tail flycatchers everywhere. There are vermilion flycatchers everywhere. And before this happened, if you went back and looked at over 30 years of birding observation records, checklists, there were almost none. There were less than 10 observations of vermilion flycatchers at Guadalupe River and Honey Creek. There were less than that of scissor-tail flycatchers, of ash-throated flycatchers. They just weren't there. These were all observations of individual birds that we saw, and we were able to keep track because we had multiple people out there. Hey, there were times we were seeing 4 vermilion flycatchers in the air at the same time singing. So just to break it down, here's all of the vermilion flycatchers. These numbers relate to individual birds, but you can see there's the territory, approximate territory size of a vermilion flycatcher. And you can see, even if this is the same bird, there's a territory there, potentially a territory there, perhaps one there, perhaps one here, another one maybe down here, another one here. These birds came in and took advantage of newly created habitat and went crazy. Here are the scissor-tail flycatchers. They were in here. They also were over here across the road in a larger area. But again, maybe a pair right there. Who knows? Maybe this is a pair right there. And then you've got more and more. This is the first year after that cut and burn, okay? And then these are out towards, when we start getting closer to the edge of the woods over here, we start picking up eastern phoebes and eastern peewees, eastern wood peewees. We even had ash-throated flycatchers here and here. Western kingbirds, didn't have but maybe 2 or 3 records of western kingbirds in all of Honey Creek or the Guadalupe River until this year. And all of a sudden we've got all of these birds. Now over time, that all thinned out. But what that shows is that when you're doing habitat management and you can create a flush of activity, and in this case, it was flycatcher city out there for that first year. The second year, fewer birds, but they are all still breeding out there, even if it's only 1s and 2s now. So it's amazing what can happen. And it was just an amazing thing to be witness to and to document. All right, I know it's 7:34 and we had talked about getting to questions at 7:15. So Patsy, you know me, I talk too much. So
no, you did good. That was awesome. What are you talking about? We love it. Okay, I'm gonna stop your screen share and I'm gonna
yep. I went ahead and turned it off.
Throw some stuff at you.
Okay.
Okay. I'll just go back to the beginning. some are comments and some are questions. Let's see. I'm coming. I'm going through. Hello. Hi, Craig. Okay.
There were no negative comments.
No negative comments about it. Okay.
Well, at least not for now.
No, we'll get to those later. I'll send those to you tomorrow.
Thanks.
Let's see. Okay. Just some comments about vermilion flycatchers over winter at Mitchell Lake, Summit Canyon Lake on the CBC. And let's see. Oh, here's an interesting comment. It says, I have seen scissortail hybrids with Western kingbirds. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not heard of that. That's an interesting thing. I know they're kind of conspecifics in terms of habitat. So I don't guess it'd be impossible, but I haven't done that deep a dive to see if they crossbreed like that.
Well, there's something for us all to research a little bit.
Yeah, you're not
and
a
watch
kid.
for. Yeah.
Not
And
a
then
kid.
here's, I think Julie said something about a nest was lined with fox fur in a
Yep.
bluebird box.
A lot of these birds, yeah. So the ash-throated and the gray crested will use bluebird boxes, and when they line their nest, they put this, the stuffing you put in pillows and things like that. They'll line their nest with all kinds of fluffy stuff, and shrikes do the same thing. A lot of the flycatchers, those big flycatchers, do the same thing. So they will take advantage of what's there. They'll take fur off of animals. You know, I think I read where an ash, it was either an ash throated or great crested, had a squirrel tail in their nest lining.
He had the sport model nest.
Yes, right.
Yeah, we had a corgi dog with a heavy coat, and we'd take that heavy stuff and we'd put it in a little bag, and the birds would come, and we had an ash throat that nested in our backyard.
Oh, nice, nice.
Okay, the question from Les here, it says about the olive-sided flycatchers. Can you see them in San Antonio? I know we've seen them out at her farm and Cibolo Nature Center. Has anybody ever seen olive-sided in San Antonio? That was the question.
Well, I most of my birding's up here, but I gotta believe they have. I mean, I've seen them in Bernie.
They migrate to San Antonio. You can
Thank
see
you, Christine. That's
Thanks, Christine.
Kerbel.
That's great.
Yeah, she keeps up with that stuff.
I'd be shocked if you couldn't.
Would you play the olive-sided flycatchers call? Because it's really
Sure,
cool
it's a
and
good one.
easy to remember, and you didn't call and you didn't.
No, I
play
didn't,
that.
because you normally don't hear it here, but let's see here.
We heard it along the creek at
Did you really?
her farm with Ken Butler. He was leading the tour, and we heard it before we saw it.
Oh, that's great. I love the call.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, here, let's see here. Let me find the right one.
That's not the full one there.
No, let me do another one. Let's see.
He says,
here.
"Quick 3 beers."
Quick 3 beers. That's kind of a slow, quick 3 beers.
That's
Got
an
those
easy
3
one.
calls in it though, but I love that. Yeah, I first heard that out in Arizona, actually. Southeast Arizona is where I first heard that one.
And then we have a person who lived in Southern California said black phoebes were common residential birds out
Yes.
there. And Say's phoebe is very common too.
I went to get a good picture off iNaturalist from of the black phoebe, and it happened to be in California, or I grabbed the picture, and the map was just lit up with observations on iNaturalist. Yeah,
Really cool. They if you go to Choke Canyon, there's one that usually hangs out by the old swimming pool down there.
oh, nice.
If you're out there, yeah, they look like they have a little heart-shaped bustier on.
There you go.
Western kingbird is nesting at the HEB parking lot in Spring Branch.
Believe
They
that.
love
Yes.
HEB parking lots, Walmart, Costco.
And part of it is there's lots of bugs, and then those trees they plant in those parking lots are the exact good density to hide a nest in. So yeah, it works out perfect.
And Greg Pastor says the Westerns are the city slicker kingbirds.
I like that. Yeah,
That's
awesome.
cute.
Very good. Very good.
Okay. It says, can you use the undertail covert color to ID couches versus Western?
Say the undertail covert?
Yes,
Or
that's what the question is.
In the tail, yes.
Or just the tail feathers. I don't know. If
Oh,
it's
the
a
tail
color.
feathers. Well, let's see. And that's between which
Couches kingbird and Western kingbird.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. but just keep in mind that if you're able to see the underside of the tail on both those birds, one has white on the outer tail and the other one doesn't. That's all you really got to look for.
That's really all you need right there. And if you wait till they fly, they almost all show that white. If they don't show white when they fly, it's not a Western.
Exactly. Or they're missing their outer tail feathers.
Though that could be true too. And I think this is Angel said, great Kiskadees also breed at Castroville Regional Park.
I saw that. That's
You
awesome.
can hear them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
very
New
cool.
Braunfels, San Marcos nesters too, Julie says.
Okay.
About that. And if you get an MPID to call on migration, you just say, thank you, hallelujah, because that's, we were doing a Christmas bird count one time and we heard from the bushes, we saw this little MPID and we went, abandon all hope. And all of a sudden we heard,
yep.
We went,
That's the one.
we did a little happy dance.
Yeah, that's the one that's the most reliable for sure, at
Uh-huh.
least in my experience.
And the question, are there any behavioral variations which can help with identification of MPIDs?
No.
Where did they stop and put their nest?
You just keep fighting it. They just keep fighting it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, if you go up to northeastern America, or we were
Yes.
in not Saskatchewan, up on the East Coast near New Brunswick and all that, alders nest in alders, and they make their sounds and they do everything just like they're doing. So you need to schedule you a bird trip up there, and then you can at least hear what they sound like in the wild.
Well, years ago when you all sent me to the Audubon camp up in Maine,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
they were up there. It's the first time I ever heard them in my life. They were singing away. It was awesome.
Oh, that's a good advertisement for Hog Island camp,
Island,
and
yes,
Audubon camp. There's a lot of neat birds up there singing that we don't get to hear.
Exactly.
Here.
You'll
Yeah.
get
If you ever get a chance to go there, go there.
Do that.
You'll get sick of black-throated greens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, the first time I heard of black-throated green, I thought it was a golden cheek warbler that had a sore throat or something. Okay, and here's a comment that I think all of us can appreciate. I'm so glad to have permission to just walk away and say MPID.
I saw Coco's comment. I think that's right. By golly.
And a really good question.
Coco, you have my permission.
Yeah, you have all of our
Not that
permission.
you need it.
Okay, about the habitat restoration, it's not as many of these birds being seen by rangers there. Will the Baccharis overgrowth ruin Honey Creek habitat?
Well, they're trying to work on the Baccharis right now, I think to some degree. First of all, there are Baccharis species that are native. They've just gotten out of hand. I would say that it's not impossible that could happen, but I think if they continue to burn on a 3 or 4 year rotation, whatever it is they're using, that will continue to push it back so that habitat will remain positive habitat for flycatchers and lots of other, painted buntings and other birds. So,
Cool.
But what's going to happen too, when they did that first fire, as you remember, they killed a lot of big oak trees.
Yeah, they
So
got it a little
eventually-
too hot.
A little too hot. So a lot of when those trees fall, it's actually going to make it even better habitat for things like dick thistles, which now nest out there that never did before, and several other species. So field sparrows, lark sparrows. As that habitat evolves, the birds will evolve with it.
That's right. Question, real good question here. What does trail, you mentioned trails, flycatcher several times. What does that mean? What does that stand for?
So that those two birds, the alder and the willow, used to be called the Trails flycatcher. And Trails, that was the name of a gentleman. This bird was named after him. And what happened is they finally split them out. And so, but even with bird banding, so in our bird banding book, they have them separated out, but the fallback is to just call it a trails because it's so challenging to identify those birds. So as you know, Patsy and Tom, for bird banding with me, unfortunately, And we don't like it. We've never liked putting down trails, but that's all
Yeah.
we can do. I mean,
Yeah, and
Um,
all the things that you described, those meticulous measurements, and you get to the end and you still don't know. That's just
that's right. It's
it's
really
just not
frustrating.
fair.
So
I could show you the data sheets.
Oh, I know what they look like. Okay, here's a really we talk about the hybrids that you'd never heard of. Here's an INAT link, and I'll send you this chat, or you can copy it. Here's an INAT link about those hybrid birds that we were talking about. I'm going to check that out as well.
Yeah, I just clicked on the link, so I'll upload that and see.
Okay.
Wow,
Something
there's
about
a picture.
a porcupine nest in a blue box, in a
Yes.
bluebird
Yes,
Did he fly up?
built by, I'm not sure what that means. Whether there was porcupine quills in the bluebird box built by titmouse. Whoever asked that question, can you unmute and clarify that question?
yeah, that's an interesting.
Not quite sure.
Jessica Leslie.
This very angry Germany.
Okay.
I had a porcupine nest in a bluebird beat box. I don't know what a bluebird beat
Jessica
box is.
Leslie. Yeah.
It should be a nest box. Thank
Oh.
you, all the spell check.
Hi, Jessica.
Oh, don't you love it when it makes it smarter than you are?
A nest box.
I thought
box.
I thought maybe you had a bluebird that was playing music or something.
No. No, I
Boom,
had a
boom.
titmouse, black-crested titmouse, but its nest was made of porcupine hair.
Oh, that's right. You told me that the other
Hair.
day. Up
Yeah.
at the
Porcupine
hill.
hair.
Yes,
It
yes.
was
Oh,
really
cool.
awesome. Yeah.
Well, Delaney, a lot of you know Delaney.
Yeah.
I remember when she was a lot younger, they were camping at a park in Kerrville, and she took pictures of a black-crested titmouse pulling the hair off a sleeping raccoon
Yes.
for nest lining. So, yeah, they'll use what they can.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. Thanks, Jessica. Well, that is all the questions and comments, and it was absolutely amazing as usual. We love your presentations and we want you to do more for us. And the idea of, I have attended presentations that attempt to tease apart the MPIDs. Senti Lee does a really good one. He did that for TOS, and he did about the best job I've ever seen
Cool.
and heard. I'll send you his presentation. I've got a link to it.
That'd be
But
great. I'd love to see
It was pretty good. But I tell you what, this was a lot more fun, and a lot more fun to be out in the field with these particular birds, and being able to the habitat link to each of those birds. When you think about it, where have you seen these birds? And it's something that we forget sometimes. It's so
Giant
important
clue that we ignore.
that sometimes we
right.
ignore at our peril to
Yeah, we do. But you know what? When the birds are migrants, that's the crazy thing. And one of the big things I learned with bird banding is that, we were banding, when I originally was at Guadalupe, we were banding at Honey Creek, and in spring migration out in that cut over field with those little oak mottes, here were we caught an ovenbird.
yeah.
No ovenbird should have been in that habitat. So, it's just, when they migrate, they're using whatever they can, and
That's right. And they
but-
don't read the books.
they
Hello,
don't read the
Georgina.
books. Don't read the
I
books.
have a question.
Okay.
Yes.
We didn't deal with any brown-crested flycatchers.
I did
Good
not.
question. I started to ask that
Yeah.
too.
I just chose not to use that one, do that one.
Well, I know they're invading from the south and all that stuff, but I have problems with them. Thank you very much.
Well, so do I.
Wait till they call.
Yeah, right.
It really helped.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
we
exactly
have
right.
all three out at Mitchell Lake. We have the ash-throated, the brown-crested, and the gray-crested. And and of course Kiskadees sometimes too. So come on out there and you can practice on teasing those apart
There you go.
and teaching
There
us
you
how
go.
to do it too.
Yeah, I didn't know where to start, or I didn't know where to stop, and I thought that was a good one to stop at. So.
A person once told us, said, a person who will tell you that they can identify MPIDs through their binoculars reliably, be careful, because they will lie about other stuff also.
Well, everyone, Craig, we just love you, and we love all your presentations, and appreciate you so much. And I will tell you that, folks, if you have never been out in the field banding with anybody, you'll want to get out there. Are you going to band on the sparrows again this next winter?
We'll be starting up. We're going to start up in October this year.
Okay.
And so I'll be communicating with the folks that worked with us last year, and you can pass that information along, because we're always looking for volunteers that are willing to spend some time out there with us, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, as we've all discovered last winter.
Oh yeah,
So-
you get your exercise, but it also, especially in the winter, you get all those lovely sparrows. You get to hold them in your hand and look for all those. Wonderful.
Conch and grasshoppers and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you get the chance to do it, get out there with Craig. But I will warn you that once you have that bird in your hand, you will never be the same. It will hook you in the heart, and you will be a bird nerd forever and want to learn more about them. So thanks, Craig, for all you do and for all you've taught us, and we appreciate it. And thanks everybody for coming tonight. We'll have the recording up on our website tomorrow sometime soon. So if you want to listen to some of it again or look at some of those slides, they'll be there for you. And have a good evening, and thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Craig.
It's off to Iowa.
Okay.